Hello and welcome to the Chat Lounge. I'm Tuyun. We are now broadcasting live from our studio on the bank of the Huangpu River. The area is also known as the Bund, the most visited destination in Shanghai, the city where China's annual International Import Expo is held. Here with us today are Bettina Schuon-Behanzing, Vice President of the European Union Chamber of Commerce in China, and Xu Jingduo, Senior Fellow with the Beijing-based think tank Pango Institution. A warm welcome to you both.
Thank you, Tuyun.
Thank you very much.
And this is this year's China International Import Expo has kicked off, and it's the fourth consecutive year for China to hold the event. But it's my first time to visit this expo, and I think it's also the first time for Qingduo to visit this event.
Yes.
So let's start with Bettina, who's been living and working in Shanghai for over 2 decades, right?
Yes, that's right.
Witnessing the launch of the event 4 years ago.
Yes.
So from your perspective, what's the most obvious or the biggest change, in your opinion, since the event was launched 4 years ago?
Yeah, indeed. This is now the 4th edition of the CIIE since it was first held in 2018. Mm-hmm. And it has really developed into a fantastic platform for international procurement, for investment opportunities and cultural exchange. So when I look at the numbers this year, I saw 3,000 exhibitors from 127 countries. That's really amazing. And I think that's exceeding again the numbers from last year's exhibition. So that shows the importance of the CIIE. Mm. And I think what is also different this year is that there are digital pavilions for around 29 countries. And they are using virtual reality to showcase latest technology and also introduce the countries with regard to tourism and culture. Mm. So what is unfortunately the same like last year is that due to the COVID restrictions, many foreign visitors couldn't come because of the quarantine situation and the difficulty to obtain visas. So this is really a pity. So live streaming is what counts and what is important.
Indeed. Have you found any, surprises at this year's event already? Or?
I think what is surprising is that there is a big focus on this pandemic, like innovative disease control, disease management. Mm-hmm. And this is for sure something which is now in the focus because, yes, we have to see how the world can collaborate and work together to control this disease, this pandemic.
Mm. And Bettina, can you please give us a brief introduction of your member companies or the companies from EU present at this year's event?
Yeah, I for sure cannot tell you specifically how many companies, member companies participate, but definitely there are many European companies, key players in different industry segments. And we launch every year a business confidence survey, which we also published this year in June. And in this survey, about 17% of our members confirmed that they will participate. About 43% were not so sure, and 40% they might rather not participate. Some concerns are for sure not so sure how many business opportunities can really be realized. And for sure, COVID also plays a role. But overall, European companies really find this is a great platform to showcase their latest technologies. And the companies participating, they reflect a broad range of different industries, from automotive to chemicals, pharmaceuticals. And for sure, renewable energies are very, very important. And I think here, European companies are really at the forefront of developing low carbon strategies And I think creating this low carbon future is something which is really key also on this year's exhibition. And I think there we have many opportunities for China and European companies to cooperate.
I totally agree. Then do we see any changes to the composition of your delegation this year when compared to the previous events?
Well, I think the composition is more or less the same. You know, many different industries, all well represented. But as I mentioned, there are focus topics like new energy vehicles, renewable energy, pharmaceutical. These are definitely key areas.
Then Qingduo, from what Bettina told us, what's your interpretation of the EU delegation's composition or the makeup of this delegation?
Obviously, renewable energy, you know, because of this, I think the COP26, the climate change is the buzzwords, and also it's true in China. It's really about how to achieve a low carbon lifestyle.
Right.
Now, you know, that's the goal for the nation. Basically, with the involvement of the top leadership, the government at different levels, and the public. So technology is to play a very important role. It's not only about the awareness, but also it's really the technology. You know, I was at a small forum, you know, discussing like how to basically transition smoothly from the fossil fuel to this renewable energy. You know, one problem we have met is really about the storage technology of the renewable energy. You know, they produce a lot of like wind energy, like solar energy in the northwestern part of China.
Right.
But the problem is like how to storage them, and then you can be used probably in the eastern part, more developed region of China. That's the technology we need. Hopefully there will be a breakthrough. Hopefully one way or another we can solve that, and then we can rely more and more on the renewable energy. We have to make it more reliable, you know, for this energy crunch, not only in China, European countries, basically worldwide. Part of the, you know, to blame probably is that you know, we should invest more in transition here.
Right. As Bettina just said, there are a lot of EU companies here, and also a lot of them are from other countries. So the figures we got is that there are nearly 3,000 exhibitors at this year's event. They are from 127 countries and regions. And the number of total exhibitors this year actually exceeded that of last year. And over 80% of the Fortune 500 and industry-leading companies from last year's expo are participating again in this year's event. So, Qingduo, what do the figures tell you, actually?
Well, I think, you know, if you, in particular, in the global Fortune 500, for example, big companies, basically from every country, you know, like 80% of them come back again to this CIIE. That because CIIE is not only the platform for you to do business, to reach deals with the potential, you know, investor from the Chinese side or the purchaser, but also is a platform to create this awareness about your brand. You know? For example, you know, I think, you know, you and me probably have this experience. If you go to the expo, you see a new company. Oh, I never heard of this. Maybe they had been there for years and it's one of the best brands, but you are not aware of that. But here, because of the expo, there's awareness being created, and the media will cover that story, will tell their story. What's it about? Probably they can help a lot of people here in China. You know, consumers, you know, Chinese consumers are changing. They are demanding, you know, best quality, smartest, you know, gadgets, whatever the product services, they want the best. You know, there's I would say a group of privileged consumers, you know, in Beijing and Shanghai, the first tier city. They are not price sensitive. As long as you have the best service, as long as you have the best, you know, products, bring it on.
Right.
And yes, there's a market. It's really about you have to get connected with the consumer and with the retailer, with the market.
Yeah, I bet it would be a feast for the eyes. As Bettina just mentioned, there are a lot of present here, but it's a pity that a lot of them cannot be here due to the COVID pandemic. Yeah. So this year we also got this online exhibition, right? Do you have any idea of that, Qingduo?
Yeah, I heard of that. I think this is, the best we can do during this special period of time, the pandemic, which is global. And there's, for the Chinese side, of course, you can see there's basically zero tolerance policy. It is very strict, I would say, the quarantine. And also, as Bettina mentioned, about the visa is not easy to get sometimes. It is a challenge for some of the exhibitors from other countries. But at the same time, I would say, if you look at the numbers of participants, in particular the exhibitors, the enthusiasm remains there. I think behind that, it shows like the Chinese market and people, how they see the Chinese market or the potential of the Chinese market. For example, there's 400 million strong, the middle class, which is also growing. As I mentioned, they are very basically eager to consume not only made in China products, but also made in Germany, made in European countries, from Argentina, from Brazil, from Southeast Asian nations. Chinese people are very open-minded. They want to experience something new, some different experience, some quality experience, quality services, products. So I would say that's a good chance for any global company. If they want to survive and if they want to succeed, they have to be present in the China market. I think it's simple. You simply cannot ignore the China market.
Definitely. Bettina, do you have any idea what kind of EU companies applied for online exhibition, or do you have?
Actually, I don't have here specific information which companies applied for online. We don't have this at the chamber. But as Tinur said, and I mentioned also before, it is obviously new this year that there are many companies who use these digital pavilions. And I think this is a great opportunity, especially in those times where people cannot come from overseas, to introduce your latest technologies and innovations.
Yeah, and also, if I may, I want to add that if you look at the latest figure released by OECD, the organization basically of advanced economies, economic cooperation organization, the figure showed that China again is the largest foreign direct investment recipient, like $177 billion. So what does that mean? That means like China, you basically can translate that into plain language. China is the most attractive destination for foreign investors because there are opportunities, because you can succeed in this land here in China.
And it's the country, got this COVID virus best under control, right?
Yes,
that's the prerequisite.
It's interesting you mentioned that. There are, I would say, like two different perceptions, sort of like beyond China, people would say, very difficult to get into China, the visa issue because of the quarantine issue. But inside China, you and me, Bettina, like living in Shanghai, you feel very safe. Basically, there are small outbreaks now and then, but quickly they will be put under control. People have confidence in the government. No problem.
And for sure, also European businesses are benefiting from this market development, because also last year, 2020, Q1 was very difficult, but already in April, business resumed, and 2020 was for most of our members a fantastic year with regard to revenue and also profitability.
Right. And talking about healthcare issue, prior to this year's event, the CIIE Exhibitors Alliance established a professional committee for medical equipment. It's actually the third committee of its kind after the first two were established last year, focusing on dairy products and public health and epidemic prevention. So, Qingduo, why is such a committee for medical equipment needed now?
Well, I think for the if you take a look from different players, like from the central government point of view, now you have such an alliance that is they would love to hear directly from those companies, those managers. What do you think we should do in terms of acquiring this high quality, top quality equipment, because there's a huge demand. Chinese population, we call it aging population. There's demand for this medical service with this top quality equipment.
Right.
So for the Chinese side, they would love to bring in the best quality, the best equipment to the Chinese market because there's a need. And also they would love to hear them about how the Chinese government should proceed to deal with the challenges, potential challenges with aging population. And from this, the organized point of view, like CIIE, they would love to hear their opinions from around the world. They are from different parts of the world. They are from the best companies, basically, here, largest companies. So they can give some advice, like how to make a CIIE more professional.
Right.
With efficient, with the effectiveness, and also, at the end of the day, you want to have you want to see a fruitful outcome of your company, of your business, right? And also for CIIE organizers, that's also their pursuit. So, and for the participants, one of the managers said that, we see the spillover effects, and it's very effective. The platform of CIIE created, so they are interested in joining this alliance too.
Right, true. The reason why they have great interest in China's market is because they can benefit from this market, right? So Bettina, from your point of view, how have the members of your organization benefited from the expo over the past few years? Which sectors have come up with the best results in terms of attracting intent for cooperation, clinching deals, things like that?
Yeah, well, the European Chamber members, they report that they really value the opportunity the CIIE gives to showcase their latest technologies and innovation. And this is so important, as Tindua just mentioned. It's a fantastic opportunity for branding and to attract attention of your consumers and customers. So, and especially in such a market which is so big. You also mentioned it before, China is the largest recipient of foreign direct investment. It's the world's second largest economy, and it's definitely the world's largest consumer market. So you have to be here and have to be part of this vibrant economy. And again, here are some figures from our business confidence survey. Our members report that last year about 25% of them participated, and more than 50% they signed business agreements, and almost all of them realized. So I think this is really an amazing result, and it shows that CIIE really gives you a lot of opportunities to find new customers and to sign real deals, business deals. And I think this sentiment towards with regard to the CIIE is extremely positive.
But it's been the fourth such event already. But do you think that the market is becoming a little bit saturated because, China is open to the world and they can come as they want? So is the market being, too crowded for?
Well, I would not say that it's saturated. I mean, it's a vast market and it has so many business opportunities. It has just changed. Like 10 years ago, foreign companies came to China and they all made very good business and they were all welcome. But now we have a lot of local players who meanwhile really developed into companies who produce very good technology, very good quality. So our competitors are now domestic players. And this is why, as a company entering the Chinese market, I really have to make up my mind and have to ask myself, what can I contribute? What opportunities do I have in China? And here I think, especially when you look at the development of the local players, R&D, local R&D is key. So you have to come here with latest technology, you have to develop products according to the Chinese customer needs, and the market is extremely fast. So we have to learn from this. I think this is very important, and this is what has really changed nowadays.
Picking up on what Bettina said, have said interesting the Chinese market. You have to know the market. I think there's a survey saying that like in Germany, on the average age to purchase like a BMW is 53, but in China, they're 35. And a lot of them are women, actually.
Yeah, interesting.
So
We got greater like purchasing power here.
because you have even a small percentage of the large population, there could be resulted in a real large number of consumers.
Yes.
So that's
Absolute
that's
numbers.
part of the feature of the Chinese market. And also remember, the economy is growing. People, the salary, people's income are also growing. So the consumer ability, I would say, consumption ability is also on the rise in general. And if you look at the situation, for example, the automobile, in China, this EV with the electronic vehicle is very popular. You can see, I would say, the competitiveness, yes, has increased. But at the end of the day, competitiveness will bring better results, better services, better products. So everybody will benefit from that. Even as competitors, will learn from each other. For example, in the Chinese market, people often say BBA, they say BMW. In Chinese, they say Benz, Mercedes, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they call it B. Audi. It's the top three, Chinese car drivers. They love that.
Right.
But now they are facing competition, strong competition from Tesla, from XPeng, from NIO, from BYD, local players, American players. So that sort of gives them some pressure. Or they have to, join the competition and invest, as you said very well, local R&D, research and development in the China market to see, what's the preference of the Chinese consumers? How can I serve better about this market? And because this market is important.
Bettina, have your member companies mentioned about the increasing pressure on them, competitive pressure?
Absolutely. As I mentioned before, the biggest competitors are now the local players. And this is why we have to learn from them. What makes them so successful? And one crucial element is definitely speed. And local R&D. I mean, now also from the government, there's a high focus on innovation, on technology. And this is where we, have to join. And that's why it's not possible that you develop technology overseas and then think you can come to China and sell it here. You will not be successful. So you have to develop and research here. You have to really put your teams here. And this is for sure at the moment also what makes business a little bit difficult is that the teams from the headquarters cannot come at the moment because they don't get visa, and with the quarantine regulations it's really difficult. But this is so crucial, that they come to China, that they feel on the ground what is going here, these market dynamics, the speed, and that they go back to the headquarters as a kind of ambassadors to explain the headquarters what is actually going on here in China. And also vice versa, that Chinese employees can go back to the headquarters and learn from them. Because I think, there's this China speed, but there's this German or European quality technology. And this is a great combination. So we need to have joint development teams. They can learn from each other. They have different approaches to R&D. Chinese usually have a kind of, in our European eyes, maybe a little bit chaotic approach. So it's this trial and error. You go this direction. If it doesn't work, you go in the other direction. Whereas European companies are very systematic and they waste long time for the first step to do the planning, the preparation. Whereas the Chinese say, wow, that takes much too long. We have to be faster. And also the consumers are actually included in this development process, which is also something which is very special. So even you can launch a product which is maybe 90% and you continue to develop it with the customer, with the consumer. I think this is unique to China.
And I think that's where your organization plays a role, right? Educate them how the Chinese market is different from the European market.
Absolutely.
How have they adapted to these changes already? I know the CIIE is a solution to the problem. Any others ways that you help them to better adapt to this change?
Yeah, well, this is actually one of the major tasks of the European Chamber. We are the voice of European businesses here in China, and we for sure give recommendations to European companies to the European Union, but also to the China government. So we see ourselves, very active in advocacy work, and I think that is really relevant, that is really important. And we are very happy that also the Chinese government is very open, and they talk to us, and they are very happy that we give here feedback and opinions, because it's in all our interests that China will continue to develop. It's an amazing market, and our members, they also report that they are very confident about the future business opportunities and the future development of this market. So they plan to stay here, they also plan to have their future investments in China, and this is why we have to continue in this direction, to make sure that we can develop together. And here's the CIIE for sure is a fantastic bridge between China and the rest of the world.
And do you have any expectation for this year's event? Say how EU companies would perform at this year's International Import Expo. Is there any concerns there?
As I mentioned, business for sure is getting a little bit more tough. We had a very good year 2020, also 2021 started well, but now in Q3 we see a little bit going down, some
right.
dip. Reasons are, power cuts, which had a big impact on European, not only European companies, I think on all the companies operating here.
Right.
And also raw material prices are going up. It's difficult to book container space, and prices are rocket high. And then the pandemic, COVID, which makes it so difficult to connect. And there is this risk, this danger that you are building silos, the European silo and the China silo, and they don't talk to each other anymore, and they don't understand each other anymore. And this is for sure very dangerous and very critical. So I sincerely hope that China will opening up again soon, and that people can resume their travel activities, because this is so crucial, so important for business and for exchange.
Indeed, we're also looking forward to that, right? Only exchange can promote development.
That is right. Mostly, of course, the third quarter is a bit special. Let's say, it's a worldwide energy crunch because of the COVID. There's a supply issue, disruption.
Right.
We see that in the U.S., in European market, in China too. China is better within China actually, but still there's an issue of like how far we can go. How long the state can go. That is, there's a lot of discussion inside China too, and I think the general understanding is like with this, booster, the third shot of the vaccine, largely people are looking at, what about after the Winter Olympics, the beginning of next year. Probably more and more countries are opening their borders. China will do that too. But of course, business people would love to see it as soon as possible.
Yes.
Right.
But I believe that the central government, they have manufacturers, they have to take that into consideration. But if you look at the long-term development, as you mentioned, there's a very important speech given by President Xi Jinping at the opening ceremony of the CIIE. He again repeat this commitment of the Chinese commitment to openness, and I think if you say there's a rhetoric, and also if you look at the action of the Chinese government to long-term policy, the general trend is very clear. For example, RCEP, China is part of that regional. I would call it the tariff reduction agreement, basically that consists of China, Japan, South Korea, 10 ASEAN countries, Australia, New Zealand. So the very important regional agreement. So they are going to take effect on January 1st, basically less than 2 months to go.
Yes.
So you can see, like for example, Japan, they are looking at their GDP to be lifted by 2.7%. That's a great deal. And their export, basically tariff-free percentage of their products will be increased from 8% to I think about close to 90%. So they see the Chinese market, the South Korean market, they say, oh, we can sell a lot more and tariff-free products.
Oh, yeah,
you
big
can see-
opportunities,
Yeah, there's a
definitely.
boost
Yeah.
for the Japanese, economic growth. Of course, Chinese consumers will benefit from that too. Southeast Asian countries will benefit from that too. Australia, New Zealand, and also China has applied to join the DEPA, we call it, Digital Economic Partnership, basically started by Singapore, New Zealand, I think Chile, the three countries. So Digital Economic Trade Pact, and then CPTPP, sometimes we call TPP plus TPP 11. So that's the more high standard opening up and high standard of trade between countries, 11 countries. If China can join that, that will be a huge market joining this TPP group. So that will be, again, mutually beneficial, but also that will require China to do a lot of efforts in deepening the reform and further opening up, for example, subsidies, state-owned companies, intellectual property rights, etc. And I think, President Xi in his speech, he mentioned that China will proactively look at those reforms and changes. So I'm confident, long term, China will be committed to that. I think the Chinese side, basically, if there's one consensus from the top leadership to the public, that is we have to be open, because openness will ensure prosperity and stability and development. By joining the WTO in 2001 for 20 years, China's development, and everybody can see that, that's a miracle. That's a miracle. Sometimes people cannot believe in that. Cannot believe how can you develop so fast and so much progress you have achieved. But that's a reality. Second largest economy. If you look at the other factor, other size of China is already the largest trading nation in terms of goods. Second largest in terms of service trade, and also largest trading partner of more than 120 countries and regions. The economies, so that's really something.
Absolutely.
But there is this concern, especially in the Western world, that the Chinese economy may be, and I quote, getting walloped, as some American media reported. So how confident, with such a media environment, and how confident can the Western companies be in the Chinese market and in the Chinese economy? Bettina, do you have any opinion from your member companies?
Well, our member companies are here in this market since many, many years, and they all, as I mentioned, have done very good business here, and they are very confident to stay, and also with regard to the future opportunities. So I think what is very important to increase this confidence, especially now as people cannot travel, as Tindor said, is that there is a level playing field, fair market access, because this is also what we always see when we talk to our members, that they report, well, we could have done much, much more business if there wouldn't be those market access barriers. And I think this is something China really has to work on, that they make sure that there is a level playing field which is fair to all the companies, no matter it's a state-owned company or a foreign invested company, and that we are all, operate under the same conditions, and not that one company gets subsidies or another company cannot join any public procurement. So this is for sure something which concerns us, the European Chamber. And this is why we hope that China will, continue with their reform agenda, that they will continue to open up.
Yeah, as Chindo just mentioned, that's a level playing field, and a lot of promises have been made by President Xi Jinping.
Yeah.
And we all know commitments with honored by actions will ensure business confidence, right?
Exactly.
And Bettina, you once said you worked in many big cities around the world, and no other city, and I quote, no other city had developed faster than Chinese cities,
That's
especially
right.
Shanghai.
Yes.
So what key factors do you think have contributed to the phenomenal development?
Yeah, well, I definitely think that this reform agenda, which was actually initiated under Deng Xiaoping already, to open up and connect with the rest of the world, what we have seen during those years, the growth China has gone through is a unique story. And I cannot see this anywhere in the world. And I think opening up and reform, this is what were crucial really to attract foreign investment, because China has the big advantage that they have such a large consumer base. And if you offer fair market access, I mean, and you get the trust of the foreign players, then they for sure, they come here, and when they see they can do good business, for sure, they want to stay. And I think this is something China has to continue, this reform agenda, systemic reform, opening up the markets, level playing field. And this is something what the European Chamber really wants to see.
Any concrete instance that you can think of to prove what you just said?
Well, I think the biggest proof is, you know, this enormous number of foreign direct investment here. As we have mentioned here, China is the biggest recipient of foreign direct investment, and I think this is the biggest proof for this.
Yeah, I think, you know, for the concerns, you know, I fully understand that, you know, as a foreign investor in China, or as a Chinese investor in the other markets, you know, of course you would love to see a smooth, level playing field, easier, basically easiness of doing business. You know, they would love to see it gets easier and easier to do investment, to deal with the governments, to deal with other business partners, for example. I think China is fully aware that it's really about the pace sometimes, like reforms and opening up. China usually follows its own pace. Sometimes, you know, people would love to see it quicken the pace, maybe. Right. Oh, can we achieve that tomorrow or overnight? But China, at the same time, I would say is a large country, and in general, despite all the huge progress, it's a developing country. If you look at per capita GDP, so you have to take that into consideration. We not only have first-tier cities like Shanghai. Shanghai is glamorous, you know, and you have to. Also the second tier, third tier, and the smaller township, smaller cities, they have more challenges over there. I think for the Chinese decision makers, they obviously they would take all the factors into consideration and then plan or do their plans basically in a long-term view and a step-by-step manner. So that's why I would say if you look at the big picture, you know, China's basically has applied to join CPTPP, for example, DEPA. You can see these are very fast moves. I would say the decision is huge, but it's made very quickly by the central government. That means they know they need some. Sometimes in Chinese we would say we need a force from outside to push us to move forward. They say we need some pressure from outside, and then we can continue with some very difficult reforms. Once you do that, China, it will benefit China. It will benefit investors from, like, say, the European Union, because ultimately that will be a mutual beneficial, win-win, move. But at the same time, I do understand that there are some challenges, to do, in particular, some of the reforms. You do have like interest. We use the word like interest group. Like they have their established interests. They don't want to change. They say, "Oh, this is a very comfortable, my position. I don't want to change." Right. So it's understandable, but at the same time, for the sake of the overall national development, we have to. And I think the top leadership, like including President Xi Jinping, is fully aware of that. And in his speech, he made that very clear. Yeah. It's really about how to implement that in a step-by-step manner, or in a more efficient manner, more effective manner, and so we can achieve much, much more.
And we are really convinced that China can achieve much more if they continue with the opening up. And for sure, sometimes there's also some concern amongst the European business community, because especially now in the current 14th five-year plan, there is a lot of emphasis on self-sufficiency. it sounds a little bit like self-reliance, and it sounds a little bit like decoupling from the rest of the world. So we are discussing this a lot in the European Chamber. And this is also, what we have to explain again and again when it comes to our fellows back in Europe, because what we don't want is that we have two economic systems. We want to benefit from each other. We are biggest trading partners. And this is why we always recommend also to the Chinese government, please continue to open up, please. Also, don't double technology, which maybe is invented already somewhere else. So, because this is a waste of energy.
Yeah, I would say, to be fair, I don't think China wants to decouple from the rest of the world.
Yeah.
It's really a response.
Sometimes we feel we are
Trump.
pressured to that. That's
okay.
It's a response for Donald Trump. Remember,
Yeah.
Huawei and the Chinese companies, 5G companies, basically, their supply of semiconductors were cut off by Washington.
Yeah, that's
and then we are not able to produce these high-end semiconductors.
Yeah.
And there's one company, Netherlands company, they can produce this machine that using that machine you can produce high-end semiconductors. And they are not able to sell the machines to China because of pressure from Washington. If you don't think about relying on yourself, what can we do?
Yeah.
So
sure.
in a sense, I would say, we have to take that into consideration. It's that sentiment, I think, it encourages a lot of Chinese people. I believe probably the Chinese government too. We have to do something by ourselves, like a fundamental science, the basic science. We have to invest in that, and so hopefully, long term, we can achieve some breakthrough, some great achievement. So we can rely probably less on unreliable partners, like Trump's Washington. Unfortunately, Biden is doing that too.
Yeah, but we hope, that all the players get back at the table. And I think what is going on now between China and the US is going in a quite good direction, because there are talks taking place. And I think this is the most important, that the parties talk with each other. And what I also like a lot is for sure also what you mentioned, or what Xi Jinping mentioned in his speech at the opening of the CIIE, is that China wants to open up, and that China wants to create a business environment which is based on market principles, international standards, and rule of law. And this is something which is exactly the direction we need. And what we see today, is, we talk to our member companies, and I mentioned this already. Business sentiment is very positive. They are very committed to China, and they also see a very positive development in the future. And this is why we have to talk to each other, why we have to exchange, because we can just benefit from each other.
Absolutely. Despite this, the high, I would say, technology, the use of that, we can remotely talking to each other or see the booth, for example. But that cannot replace, I would say, people-to-people exchange, face-to-face talks. If you look at the general picture, since Donald Trump came to power, came to the office, of course, he's gone. The thing is, we don't know whether he will come back in 2024. That's a bit scary. But anyway, before that, if you can recall, there's a lot of talk in the US media, basically global media, talk of globalization, talk of free trade, multilateralism. But nowadays, those words are taboos. In Washington, you don't hear about that. No politician is talking about the globalization anymore. No politician, no media is talking about the free trade. Because Americans, I think, because of the globalization, because of their domestic policy, there is an issue of a wealth distribution problem. Some people are lagging behind. So, for some politicians like Donald Trump, they would point a finger at others, say, oh, because of globalization, so we have this problem. No. Globalization should not be blamed. It's really domestic policy. You should have a policy that's there to deal with some of the challenges created by globalization. Unfortunately, they failed to do that, and then they point a finger at others, and then globalization somehow is becoming the scapegoat. Now look at what China is doing. RCEP, CPTPP, DEPA, and also China and the European Union. We have reached this comprehensive agreement on investment. more investment, more trade, because that will benefit both sides. But the Americans, where are they? So that is the nature of the problem here.
But compared to the United States, I think our business or partners in Europe have a better understanding of how this world operates or runs, and especially business people, right? So I think there should be more patience there, when they ask China for to be more open to the world. Yes, we are doing it, but more patience is needed as we are a latecomer after all. And Bettina, as we've mentioned, you've been living in Shanghai for over 20 years, witnessing how China's trade and the economy taking off after its WTO accession in 2001.
Yeah.
So both China and the world have benefited tremendously during this process.
Yeah.
But as you've mentioned, the COVID pandemic has made things much more difficult.
Yes.
And under these circumstances, what do you think needs to happen for both China and the rest of the world to maintain momentum, over the next decade or two?
China joined the WTO in 2001, so we are celebrating the 20th anniversary, and this emphasizes the importance of economic globalization, which is very, very positive. We talked about this, and I think everybody wants this and needs this. And the EU Chamber has originally been created to help China with the implementation of the WTO protocols. And here with a high focus on market access, because there were really industry sectors which were completely closed or very difficult for foreign investment to enter. And I think in that sense, in that area, China has made a tremendous development, because it's opening up more and more sectors, and it's much easier for foreign business to enter and to benefit from this. And as we have mentioned, we are fostering this market access topic, but besides this direct barriers, there are also many indirect barriers like licensing or public procurement, where I think China still has to work on. It needs to be a fair environment for everybody. And as I mentioned before, our members who participated in this business confidence survey said we could do much, much more business in China if we would have here a fair business environment. And this is the 6th year in a row, because we are doing this survey since many, many years. And that shows that obviously not so much happened in the last years, and China has to work on this. And not only opening up, they really need systemic reforms. And here the European Chamber is very happy to help and to support.
But it seems the COVID pandemic slows everything down a little bit.
Exactly, unfortunately, because it is so dangerous that people cannot travel and get together, because they receive information from different media reports. But I think it is so important, especially for a country like China, which is developing with such a high speed. You have to come here, you have to be on the ground and witness what is going on here in China. And this is why I sincerely hope that once China reaches a vaccination rate maybe of 80-85%, that they think about slowly opening up the borders again, so that people can restart to travel, because this is essential. We can do a lot virtually, but to sit at the table, to look in the face, and to talk to each other, it's so important. It makes a big difference.
You've got your point there. Qingduo, what's your take on this?
Well, that's true. Of course, we can afford to be much more open in even our daily lives, I would say. I think China is confident. We can afford to be confident to be open to the outside world, right. For example. And I would say, as a matter of fact, China as the largest developing country, I would say the openness, there's a lot of room to improve. We can do that. If you compare it to the more developed countries, there's room to do. But at the same time, I would say China is progressing with solid steps. For example, last CIIE, Expo presidency talked about the negative list, talked about the free trade areas, for example. They are all realized over the past year. I would say yes. We would love to see more progress and quicker progress domestically and in terms of business and relationship with the rest of the world too. Obviously, I mean that will benefit China, that will benefit the world because we are such an important player.
Right. Point well taken. And Bettina, you were elected as the vice president of the EU Chamber of Commerce in China in May, right?
That's right, yes.
And have been providing guidance and support for strategic planning and business development for the German group of Freudenberg business groups in Asia since 2012. So from the strategic point of view, I'm very sure that you're good at this. What suggestions do you have for investors, not only from Europe, but also from other parts of the world, if they want to explore the Chinese market in the years to come?
Yes. As I mentioned before, to enter the Chinese market today is not so easy anymore because you really have to investigate what are the consumer needs, what do Chinese customers want, and can I fulfill those needs? What can I contribute? It's not like before, actually any kind of new technology.
Yeah, Chinese customers are becoming more sophisticated.
They are becoming
more
demanding, and they really, value high quality, high technology. And as I mentioned, there are meanwhile so many good local players. So you have to ask yourself, am I ready to compete with them? And do I have the right technology? And the other thing we mentioned also before is this enormous speed. The go-to-market speed from having a new product idea to the final development. This is enormous. And I always tell our headquarters and the headquarters from our European chamber members, you can learn from China. Because this is amazing, we are much too slow. And this is why, again, this exchange is so important. And also you can only be successful here if you have your local R&D. Best is you open here an innovation center. You should also think about, can I maybe shift some global divisions to China? Because China is definitely the world's biggest market when it comes to new energy vehicles, battery technology. They are really at the forefront. And I think here it is important for foreign companies also to think not only in those silos, what is at the headquarters, what is in China for China, but there are also many areas where China actually can go to the rest of the world. But for this, it is for sure very, very important that China also guarantees that IP is protected. Because for sure, when you bring technology here, you want that it is well protected. And here China, I have the advantage that I have been living and working here already for more than 20 years. And when I compare the situation today to 20 years ago, it has made really big improvement. But there are also big differences if we talk about Shanghai or Beijing or going to some more remote areas. There it is still difficult. And I think China, and this is also in the interest of the local companies who are inventing new technologies, that their IP is protected. This is key.
I think we also got a pledge from President Xi in his speech at the opening ceremony, right? With regard to IP protection.
Yeah, because I think if you look at on one hand, in the developing world, we can say IP protection is the priority for business. One of the priorities, let's say, if you go to the developing countries. But also, if you look at the development, the path of the world, let's say there's a particular technology that is well protected, and for the developing world, there's no way for them to develop if you don't copy at the very beginning. So in a sense, I understand why developing countries need to copy the product or the design from, say, a developed world, a particular product. It's understandable because it's a ladder. Sometimes people complain, when the rich countries, when they reach the top of the wall, they kick off the ladder. For developing countries, there's no way for them to climb to the top of the wall. If we strictly follow this IP, because developing countries, they don't have money to invest into research and development, and then they cannot copy, what can they do, right? But with that being said, I would say we have to strike a balance. IP protection is the right way to go.
Absolutely.
Because it will protect the interests of the inventors, of the creators, and then you give them the strong incentive to be more innovative, to innovate more products, more services, and to meet our needs. So inside China, I think the awareness is fully there. The implementation, I would say there's a huge progress. But of course, we would love to see more progress because, you know, like Huawei, like Alibaba, like Tencent, you know, like JD,
they have the copy.
Yeah, they have their own. Yeah, they have this demand too. They have this need to protect their ideas, to protect their companies, their IPs.
Yeah.
You know, some new company, you know, they're small startup companies sometimes complain, oh, we need more protection. Otherwise, you know, other big companies will just swallow up us. You know, we have to have some protection. I think the government is working on that because that's in our own interest.
And also, I think the reason why we also need to or know how important the IP protection is because we used to be the victim ourselves. Think of tea, when the tea seeds or being sneaked out of China by someone else, and how our industry has been was threatened there. And I think the Britons, they've got a more clearer idea of how important IP is because of how their IP of property right of the textile, of the industry, the whole thing being taken to the United States, and eventually, and
you
how
mentioned
does.
a very good point. That is when the
So
US,
that's why it's very important.
Industrialization, when the US started their business, for example, textile business, there's stories about how one engineer, you know, basically escaped from the UK to the US to start a factory, a plant, which is exactly the same as they do in the UK. So, you know, people would point to the US at the very beginning. Oh, you also copied the others without paying their fees, probably. But as I said, you know, that's the very beginning. Probably you have to start somewhere. But as a rule, I would say yes, respect for IP is very important.
Yes,
that's true.
I mean, history is history. But look forward, you know, into the future. I think every country should pay attention to that, should follow the rule, and also should invest in R&D to be more innovative, because that's a competition.
Yes.
A competitive edge where you're from.
Right.
But there is another topic which is crucial to this when it comes to R&D. This is the cross-border data transfer. Because now China has a very strict data protection regime with the cybersecurity law and the new personal information protection law, which just was launched. And here, you know, these laws, sometimes they lack a bit transparency. It is very difficult, especially for foreign players, to understand what do I need to do in order to be compliant, because we want to be compliant. And this for sure causes also a lot of concern back in the headquarters, because if you have to disclose a lot of technology before you can transfer any data back, then it will actually have the effect that you have a very small R and a capital D, because the foreign companies will not invest a lot in research. It's too dangerous.
That's where communication and exchange plays their role, right?
Exactly.
That's very important.
But I think data, basically this is a topic of security. You know, we're talking about cybersecurity. There's a lot of data, mostly for individuals. It's about the personal information. You don't want to be your personal information, you know, to be abused, for example. And cybersecurity issue, on one level, it's really between different countries. You know, they have all the kind of activities over there. For example, the U.S. is spying or eavesdropping the mobile phone or email address of Merkel, the chancellor. We know that's not secure, obviously. I think, you know, for China is really about on one level that's personal security, on other level is national security. Given this geopolitical tension between China and the United States, I think probably there's more concern about that.
Yeah, that's a worldwide concern, actually. Right. Okay. On that note, we've come to the end of today's show. Hope you enjoyed our chat. And please subscribe to the Chat Lounge for free on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your favorite podcast. For this special episode, you can also go to Weibo, Twitter, and Facebook. I'm Tu Yun. Bye for now.